Hi, I'm Nathan. I go by Peteparker, and every week I do comic book reviews because that's the rule at my house. If I want to buy comic books, I have to review them. So I buy a small amount usually and do reviews on them every week. This review is going to be about Avengers number 13. This title, or this series, is previously titled The Avengers, specifically The. So the fact that it doesn't have the on the front is interesting, but it's also not technically cover titled Avengers Fear Itself. So it has a direct tie-in to the rest of the Fear Itself series. So let's talk about the cover. Just like in 12.1, this is that same artist, I forget his name at the moment, that I don't like. So I really didn't like this cover, and I was really hesitant to pick this up because I was really afraid that the rest of the book was going to be the same way, much like it was in the 12.1 issue. But, you know, rest assured, on the front it also says Bendis and Bacalo, so you know that it's not the same art here that it is in the middle, because Bacalo has a very specific style to it, as you'll see in the panels that I show you. So a lot of this book is tiny little panels of different Avengers talking or having word bites, sound bites with some kind of reporter, which is never revealed. And then they flash in between old situations and new situations, and here's the blitzkrieg of New York City, which is awesome. It's also very full of the floating boxes that Chris Bacalo is so fond of. There's some more floating boxes for you to look at. It seems like anytime there's destruction, there's an awful lot of boxes floating around in the air. But sure, right? Whatever. It's the style. It's cool. Then you get some more discussion there with Jarvis, who ages. And you know, at the beginning, I was trying to put this in perspective. I noticed that Miss Marvel's costume looked weird in the very beginning of these interviews. These different people look different from one page to the next, even though they're still talking to the same person. And I realize that these interviews are happening over time, since like the very beginning of the inception of the Avengers. I mean, one part has Thor with a beard, one part has Jarvis as a young man, right? We don't get a lot of that. But right next to it is also the Guardian, who is the current Captain Marvel, and then the Spider-Man's thrown in there too. So while it's kind of in time perspective, it's also mixed in together, right? So it's kind of, I mean, the words make sense, but the pictures aren't. I don't know. Go with it, right? You know how Bendis's writing is. It's very conversational. It's very short sentences bunched together between back and forth of many characters. There are some awesome scenes in here. They got one event where the Red Hulk actually joins the rest of the Avengers for breakfast, and he eats a giant bowl of eggs, and Spider-Man barfs in his mask. That's all awesome. I really was confused about the perspective here for a little bit, because if you look in this panel, I presume those are Jarvis's hands compared to the Hulk's hands. Jarvis has pretty big hands. They're like maybe 3 of Jarvis's hands would fit into the Red Hulk's giant hand. But then on the other side of the page, Red Hulk does a fist bump with the Protector's girlfriend, who's just a normal human being, and her fist could probably fit like 30 times or something in this fist, right? So either she has a very small fist compared to Jarvis's hands, or the perspective is weird. But it seemed like, I don't know, that whole thing, like if he's this big, he'd be a lot bigger than this. But he's still very big in the scenes, and it's very cool. But still, perspective looks kind of weird there. I mean, it's noticeable, right? So that's weird automatically. And then they talk about, you know, how they got together and announced that they were going to rebuild Asgard. And then they talk about how they partied with all the Asgardians, which is cool. They give a little behind the scenes. This is the kind of thing that Bendis is really, really good at, is going back and retelling a part of the overall story that you didn't get to hear before or didn't get to know about. There's apparently a budding romance between Spider-Woman and Hawkeye, which is altogether weird, right? Because this is kind of a flashback, but it's not that far back, so it's hard to put it in order. It's after, it seems like after Asgard fell, but it could be before. You don't know for sure. So at one point they talk in here about how Clint was married, and then they talk to Mockingbird, and she's like, I don't really want to talk about my personal life, but he can do whatever he wants. They're not together again anymore or whatever, right? But wait a minute, weren't they just separated for like 30 years or something? And, you know, she was a clone that died, or a Skrull that died a while ago, and now she's back for the first time. They're only together for like 6 months or a year or something, and they decide to get a divorce? Seems really weird, right? And not only that, but he's also super interested in the one chick who still looks like the Skrull Queen, right? Maybe I'm thinking too much of the past year or the past 2 years. But Spider-Woman even talks about how the whole secret invasion thing is kind of a sore subject still, right? She doesn't like being represented as the Skrull Queen who tried to take over the Earth and killed a lot of her friends or whatever. But it doesn't seem to bother Hawkeye at all. He still digs her looks or whatever, even though that happens to be the woman, or the looks of the woman who captured his wife that he loved and made him believe that she was dead for a long, long, long time, right? Isn't that weird? It's kind of weird. And maybe they'll get into that or whatever. They talk about briefly how it's a bad idea because he's on the team and he's on a rebound because he's just getting out of the relationship with Mockingbird, right? But those are all the wrong reasons to be concerned. He should be concerned because of who she looks like. Sure, it's not the same person, but, you know, would you get all hot and bothered with the chick that looks exactly like the woman who shot your girlfriend before or something, right? Isn't that kind of the same? I don't know. Weird, right? So let's go for a rating in this. Oftentimes when I'm reading Bacalo's art, it's there's too much of that floating boxness to really understand, to really see what's happening. But I feel like this book specifically was tightened up. A lot of these panels are really well done. The placement is well done. You know, there's a little perspective issue, and there's still some floating boxes in there. But I think this is some of the better stuff that Bacalo has done. It's less sketchy, it's more defined, it's really sharp and well done. And maybe that could be, you know, inking and coloring also, but it's a really good combination what they have here. It's also a good example of Bendis's classic style of talking back and forth, the characterization of these characters, the way he believes that most people talk, which is not very long-winded. It's very connected, it's very back and forth. So if you dig those type of things, if you really like Bendis, if you really like Bacalo, then you're going to love this book. You're going to think it's awesome, right? I like them both, but I have loved Bendis' stuff in the past. I don't necessarily love this specific story, although it's really interesting, and it's also very classic how he takes you back to older events and tells you a little bit more of that story. It's amazing how often they can do that, or he specifically can do that. But then again, he's written all these events, more or less, right? So he kind of can do that all the time. It's a weird issue, man. It's a different turn for this whole series. I mean, up until now, you've had John Romita doing, you know, 90% of the art, except for that 12.1 issue. And Bendis writing these huge, huge storylines, these huge plot lines, right? And now you have kind of some setup and kind of some backstory going into the next thing. So I don't know, right? I still liked it a lot, and I'm having a hard time not giving it a 5 out of 5 because the writing is good and the art is good. There's just nothing that blows me away about it, and I still don't care for the art on the cover. That throws me off so much. There's still little things here and there that doesn't make it perfect and don't make it a blow-away book, right? Still, well worth your $3.99 though. So let's give it a 4 out of 5, right? But almost a 5 out of 5. There you go. You'll probably like it. If you like the Avengers, if you've been following all the events and you want to see a little bit of different perspective, if you want to see some really great examples of Bacalo's art that's not so specifically stylized and sketchy, then this is great. This is very good. Don't let the cover fool you. It's a much better book on the inside. Not to say that the cover's not okay. It's just not my cup of tea. So there you go. That's that review. You can check out my other reviews on YouTube under Spidey207. Check out Comic Vine. Look for Peteparker. Look for the same name at Marvel and Comics databases and at ifanboy.com. All very good sites in their own right. So thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you again next time.